Welcome back, episode 11, Night Pitch with Justin Wick. I'm Justin Wick, he's Evan Johnson. Evan, we wanted to talk at length about the fans in the world of baseball, because when you develop some acumen as a player, or whatever capacity if you're around the game quite a bit, you're exposed to a very wide range of fans that you're going to see at the ballpark. You're going to see some diehard season ticket holders that know all the players by name, that know their performance, that know how they did the night before. You might have some people that are showing up to the ballpark for perhaps the first time ever. So we want to talk about how you manage that as a player when you recognize that there's a whole lot of different perspectives with people coming in the ballpark gates with a ticket, a whole lot of different attention spans, a whole lot of different attention perspectives. Some people are locked in, some people are there for the ice cream. There's a place for everybody in the ballpark. So, in your experience, what you've seen, and I want to talk about just off the cuff from the progression of when you were a little leaguer to now in professional baseball where you currently are, what are some of the trends of the overall fan experience that you can kind of attest to? How does it progress throughout the entirety of your career?
Well, it's always nice when you have the affiliates or the teams that have that one or two fans that are there every day. You know, there was a couple in St. Cloud, there's a couple at Creighton, and then there's the obnoxious fans that come every single day. A perfect example would be the Toast Man in West Virginia.
You told me about this guy. This is pretty good.
Are you familiar with the Toast Man?
I didn't know if you were going to go here. I forgot about this, and then you actually I haven't thought about this for probably a year and a half, and this was not what I was going for in asking this question, but this went like the perfect direction that I wanted it to go.
Well, yeah, that's just the first thing that came to mind was the Toast Man. But the Toast Man, the West Virginia Power in Charleston, West Virginia, is no longer a minor league team, but it used to be for the Pirates, and then it switched over to the Mariners. Well, I played part of my first season in Charleston, West Virginia, and there was a fan, and people just called him the Toast Man. And he sat. So if the visitor's dugout is here, and then home plate is right here, he sat like right in between where the hitters would walk back from like home plate to the dugout. And they installed an outlet for this guy on the back of the wall so that he could plug in a toaster. And he would bring loaves of bread to the game, and he would put it next to the toaster. And anytime an opposing player struck out, he would have toast ready, like fully made toast out of his toaster, and he would yell, "You are..."
Yeah. We're going to do this again? There we go. Try it one more time.
You are toast. You are toast. And everybody around would be yelling, "You are toast." And he would throw the toast at other fans and into the dugout of the visiting team.
Like, was there a net that ever stopped it, or would it like legit make it into the dugout?
He could get it into the dugout if he wanted to. He wouldn't do it every time.
Well, how far of a throw? Like, how far of a throw was it from him?
Oh. I mean, not far, because he was in the seat like right next to the coach.
Oh, he had it made right to goodness.
Yeah, he's in that spot. They installed an outlet for him to bring his toaster, so he could make toast during the games and throw toast at the fans and at the other guys.
They got the whole like announcement for PA announcers of please be alert at all times as bats, balls, other objects may leave the field of play. Please refrain from throwing objects onto the field at any time. Violators will be subject to arrest. Like, was there just zero policy in West Virginia that there was no governing against this?
I guess they didn't care about the Toast Man because he was their whole thing. Everybody had heard of the Toast Man before, and he would not only throw toast, but he would come to the games with like cardboard cutouts of players of the opposing team or like signs, and he would yell things at them like while they're hitting. And I remember pitching and like I would get to 2 strikes and he would start the chant of Fire up the toaster! Fire up the toaster!
You're on the mound, like you can hear this clear as day because he's just
because it's
sitting
right. Yeah, it's right there, and it's not a very big ballpark, but and that other players and other teams would not be very happy when they struck out. They would be way, way more mad, and he would be able to see if they're like slamming a helmet or like throwing a bat, and then he would really, really get into it if that was the case.
It's just feeding him more. Yeah, that's just encouraging him to even be worse right there. You know, it's funny too because like what I've seen in the world of event operations of the lists of different things that you can or can't bring into stadiums, it's very common that on like the forbidden list of items, you'll see tortillas. Like, I mean, you'd think that's just weird, like who bringing tortilla in, but it's because you could treat it like a frisbee. You could get like you could play ultimate frisbee into the outfield with a tortilla. So you fling that thing and it can go. So like, not only, I mean, bringing food into the ballpark, some places won't let you bring anything more than just like a personal sized small food bag. Some places won't let you bring food at all. Like they're letting this dude just bring in a whole loaf of bread just to be hanging out.
No, multiple. He'd bring like 4 loaves of bread, and he would bring. I don't know if they had if he was able to leave the toaster there because he knew everybody, but yeah, he would have the toaster as well. So there's that.
You know, I think that there's something to be said about like the fans that have just very good in tune with the game types of attitudes. And I know that different big league venues, like you'll hear the Fenway Park crowd of just a very mature intellectual. There might be a visiting relief pitcher that just blows up and has a terrible outing. And Red Sox fans will give the opposing player that just blows up a standing ovation as he's walking back to the dugout. Like it's absolutely incredible. I mean, it's demoralizing. Yeah, you blow a save and you get pulled with 1 out in the ninth and the whole stadium is standing and cheering for you. It's brutal. But I think about like the really cool ones are when fans know how to like be kind-hearted but still showing that they have like a very revered attitude of the game. I think this happened a couple years ago, right? I know it did. I think 2011, if I'm not mistaken. This was when Grant Balfour was going crazy with the Oakland A's. For those that don't know, Australian closer, that the Balfour rage was a big thing. Of he walked out to heavy metal, everybody's just headbanging, and in the Oakland Coliseum, they ended up winning the AL West that year, I think, and the entire stadium was just going absolute. Like the golden age of what I remember the Oakland Coliseum from my upbringing was when Grant Balfour had the entire city of Oakland eating out of the palm of his hand.
That's a big stadium too.
Well, I mean, it was awesome. Like it was, I literally remember watching those games, and I think about like the blue collar, or they call it the green collar attitude back then. But I know there was a game that they clinched the NL West. I believe it was 2011. This is when Josh Hamilton was still with the Rangers, and he dropped a ball. It was kind of like a line shot, fly ball ish to him in center field. And he ended up kind of losing it in the sun, but it hit off his glove and bounced away, and 2 runs scored, and the A's ended up winning this game. I mean, it was like a huge turning point of, I mean, I don't know if it was ruled an error or not, but what could have been a pretty clear catchable ball, he kind of tanked it. So anyways, the next year, Josh Hamilton signs with the LA Angels, and his first trip back to the Oakland Coliseum, the Oakland fans unofficially made it Josh Hamilton Appreciation Night.
Oh, no.
So, like, this wasn't a sponsored promotion at all. But the right field bleachers at the Coliseum are just the coolest place ever. So he runs out for batting practice, and he's getting reads. And it's visitor BP, so the gates are open. The right field bleachers are packed, and everybody starts chanting, "Thank you, Josh." They brought Butterfinger candy bars, and Josh Hamilton was a good sport about it. They took Butterfinger candy bars, and they're like holding them up to him, and he walks over, and he's just like, "All right, give me one." He literally ate a Butterfinger candy bar on the warning track, and the whole fans were going crazy. So I think about those things. Like, it's really cool when you see a fan base that has that level of understanding. Like, that takes the requirement of, you know, some fan base needs to understand this was the guy that this was a pivotal moment. He's now with a different team. We're going to find on the calendar how do we put this together. But like, it's amazing when you can get a group of people that are really in tune with it. Like if it's one person, that's cool to have those interactions. And you mentioned like the super fans that exist. That's always a pretty cool sense. But, can you think of any instances where there's like a group of fans? I know like when I've showed up to games when sports gambling was first legalized, when you get like a group of 6 or 7 guys in the stands that are just pounding beers and doing side bets on their phone, and then they're like cheering for one more strikeout or something like this. That's absolutely brutal. Has there ever been like a movement where, I mean, this could be like a college student section or like a group of people. Does anything like that come to mind?
Well, Ole Miss comes to mind. Their student section in the outfield.
That's true.
They go.
Yeah, that's a classic one.
It's not very. I feel like it's not very specific. Maybe. I'm not sure what they do. I just know they go crazy whenever somebody hits a home run.
Yeah, and I know the Texas A&M Ball 5 chant.
Oh, that's
a pretty good one.
Texas A&M has got that down pretty good.
Brutal.
That would be tough.
I want to add one in. I don't think I've ever even told you this before, but at my junior college, we have a super fan that shows up to games, and he's done it for years. Like he'll show up and he brings cases of water and bananas to every game and every practice. Like literally during our season, we'll have a practice and he shows up with like 40 bananas and 3 cases of water. And it's just that's what he does. He just loves the team.
Somebody had a really bad cramp one time.
Dude. Well, so anyways, he cheers like nonstop. He's an old dude. He has a van. It's like a white van, kind of like a contractor van. And on one side of the van, he has this huge eagle, like a fathead sticker on it. On the other side of it, he has the Declaration of Independence.
Okay.
And, like, I mean, he's the coolest dude. So anyways, we would leave for road trips at like 4 o'clock in the morning. And he'd show up to games and he'd have hot chocolate ready for us. He'd set up a table. He'd be ready to go. And then as the bus is pulling out, he would like put on like an Incredible Hulk Halloween costume and start firing us up as we're driving away. So apparently I don't know how true this is, but word on the street is he's been banned from 2 of the junior colleges in our conference. And one of them was because this was before I got there. We had clinched our conference championship, and he ran on the field with a South Mountain Community College flag on the visitor field, and he's waving it like in front of the visitors' dugout. And the other one, he took a red Solo cup and was like cranking it up against the chain link fence to distract the pitcher. And then the athletic director of the school came over and told him that he couldn't do it anymore. I mean, he's the nicest guy ever. Like, I mean, it was absolutely hilarious. But, I mean, I know those are some super fans. Cal State Fullerton has a super fan that's pretty good. There's the Whistler at Vanderbilt. Yeah. He's pretty on top of it. I mean, he gets people involved. But, like, the most interesting sense of leadership is when you can get people involved doing something that they wouldn't normally do on their own. Like, it's amazing to see how some people might follow the lead of just some absolutely outrageous acts in some sports venues.
Oh, yeah. There's one super fan that I remember, it was in Hickory. They were playing the Hickory Crawdads. It was the same league as the West Virginia Power.
Yeah, you're South Atlantic League, okay.
Yeah, and I was starting that game, and the guy had a police megaphone, like they have the walkie-talkie right here, but then it's like that steel horn where they speak louder. Well, he sat in the first row behind home plate while I was pitching, and he was like yelling stuff at me while I was pitching with the megaphone, like pulling stuff off my Facebook and like old outings and stuff that I had. I actually pitched really
like
great.
Reading your box score. Yeah, Evan threw a week ago. He's like informing the crowd. He's like a junior varsity PA announcer.
Pretty much, yeah. He was talking about all the bad outings I had, pulling like stuff off my Facebook and like saying jokes. This is like while I'm throwing. And I actually pitched pretty good that game because I don't know. I guess it might have fired me up. Like I don't know what it was, but that was a little over the top. That's a funny thing, yeah.
When all of a sudden you like are extra motivated because of just how cynical some of these things actually are. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I have a whole lot of those. I can think of different instances when like a home fan will start chirping a home player. Like when those things, I mean, I bet that happens a little bit more at the big league level. I think it's funny when we talked a couple episodes a couple episodes ago about field design of bullpens that have fans that are in like extreme proximity. I can remember we were playing Xavier in Cincinnati, and there was some, I don't want to sound rude, some pretty overweight, out of shape dude that just stood on the fence right next to the two bullpen mounds. And there was probably 3 feet of clearance between this 4 foot fence and the bullpen mounds. And he was just standing there, and he'd have like full on conversations with people before they'd warm up and like make it out to be your friend. And then he wouldn't move. Like he would literally be closer than a pitching coach would be if you were, and he just all of a sudden would flip the switch and just start absolutely bad mouthing you as soon as you got a baseball in your hand to warm up. This guy was just such a tool, but oh my god! I mean, I don't want to encourage this either. Like, I hate for people to get onto the program. I don't want to make it seem like this is normal types of things. The reason that we're talking about this is because it's just outlandish and absurd. So please don't think that we're promoting.
Well, this is the reality of the situation. If you're gonna play on, right? Like, you chose to be in the arena, so you're gonna have to deal with it. Like that's part of
true.
Of it. Like there's this one affiliate that I've played at, and I'm not gonna say which one, but just because I'm gonna say that their home fans are brutal to their home team. It's like it's kind of like it's kind of like Philly fans a little bit. Like I was pitching and I was struggling, and I threw a bunch of balls in a row, and I finally threw a strike, and I just hear in this, they all start clapping, right? The whole crowd starts clapping when it's like strike one or whatever. It's like a 2-0 count after I just walked somebody.
Cheering against their own? That's horrible.
I finally threw a strike, and everybody starts cheering, like, yeah! And then I just hear, like, after the cheering stops, somebody in the distance just like, it's about time! I'm just like,
it's just so sad.
I'm like, gosh dang it! Like, just give me a break, man.
You're like, you just can't win at this point. Well, I think it's funny too. Is like the awareness of some people just have no clue. And I mean, I remember thinking about this sometimes when I would get kind of frustrated about maybe I had a bad performance or something. Like the good context that I would have, maybe there was like a first base side of video that I could watch. Every so often, if I knew that there were fans right behind the view of me on the mound, I liked looking into the stands and take a look at how many people were actually watching the game when I didn't execute this pitch.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I didn't want to, I hate to kind of say this in a poor context, and I don't want to sound like I'm calling out any particular venue, but, you know, it got me thinking of when you haven't played in front of thousands of people yet, and you're finally getting the opportunity to do it. I can think about like the average. Let's just take the average big league crowd. I'm curious your take on this actually. So I won't like premeditate this with anything, but for the average pitch, I mean, let's just take all pitches all together combined. What in the big leagues? What percentage of fans per pitch do you think are actively paying attention? Like just the average pitch in the big leagues. What of the fans that are in the ballpark? What percentage do you think are watching?
Okay, I'm gonna say this varies from team to team. So give me a team. Name a random MLB team, and then I'll give you my estimate.
I don't want to badmouth the franchise. We're gonna say one. I mean, that's actually
well, you're
that's
not.
fair.
I mean, like it depends on how many people are going to the game too. Like, I mean, like if you have a franchise that has a bunch of people that go to the game, but nobody's paying attention, like that might be right. It's a percentage thing. We're not bad mouthing any franchise.
All right, let's go with like a middle of the pack right now. Kind of a storied history, but Cleveland Guardians.
Ooh, I'm gonna say 40% of people.
Really, you'd go under 50?
I would say the average number of people watching or paying attention per pitch would be 40%.
Well, I mean, some people are in the concourse, in the bathroom, getting food. That's interesting. I wouldn't have thought you'd have gone below 50. Like that's actually interesting. I mean,
well,
I kind of get it, I guess.
Give me another team.
Well, all right. Well, we said Fenway Park earlier. What about all right, we'll go with the Red Sox.
I'm gonna say 60%.
This is
It's
invigorating.
it's also
honestly.
a smaller
this
venue.
is interesting.
It's a smaller venue.
That's
'cause
true.
it's
That's a
Fenway.
good point. I was thinking the same
So
thing.
if you're the tickets are a little bit pricier because it's the Red Sox and it's Fenway.
Yeah,
Right?
and it's more intimate and it's easier to capture your attention, I would argue,
And a
and
lot
it's more
more-
of a storied venue.
Yeah, and a lot more people are super fans of the Red Sox than they are the Cleveland Guardians.
That's true.
I would assume.
Dude, this is like fascinating. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. That's so interesting. I can remember. This is actually a good kind of side story. I was playing summer ball and there was a promotional giveaway, and it was the piggy bank day where they took like $2,000 worth of quarters and they put it all over the infield dirt, and they let the kids run out and grab all the quarters and put it in their piggy bank.
Oh, no.
So I'm pitching. It's the top of the ninth inning, and we're up by like 5. It was just my day. It was my day to pitch. Like at that point, I was kind of like a setup man, but I hadn't thrown the last 2 days. So hey, you're going into. I knew I was throwing no matter what that day. We're up by 5. It's the ninth inning, and I couldn't find the zone. Like I was just out of it. I was not having a good day. And I'm getting warmed up. I'm like on the game mound. I walked the leadoff hitter or something. It was terrible. And I look over at first base, and right behind first base is the gate where all the kids are standing there holding their piggy banks. And like none of them are watching the game. Like they do not get. Like all the parents are over there taking photos of their kids. And here it is. I'm pissed. I just walked this guy, and I see in the background as I'm checking the runner every time I look up, these kids banging on the chain link fence, wanting the game to be over. Oh my god! I will admit that actual situation really kind of threw me off. Like as a player, you don't ever want to admit situations like that making you uncomfortable, but that was a bad one.
Well, when I was a kid, I was a really big Cardinal fan, and my parents would take us to Cardinal games every year. And by I mean like really big fan is we would get the scorebook, and
there you go.
I'm like, 9-10 years old, and I'm doing the scorebook of the whole game. When we get back to the hotel, I'm like reading off like I'm counting everybody's RBIs and like reading it off and doing all this stuff and putting together the stat line. And then the next day we go to another game and I do it again, and I'm like, oh, he had a good day yesterday against this guy, or like last time I watched.
Oh, that's the best. It's so cool
because I was super into it. Well, I have a story for you because my dad was also into it the same way. And so was the rest of my family. We loved going to those games. We just watched every game all year, all 162 games. So we're at a game, and when the game ends, it's kids run the bases day. So like I'm in line in this concourse that like goes up all of the ramp for kids run the bases, and my dad is in line with me and my little brother. And we go down, and we finally get on the field. And we're walking down the warning track from where you enter by like the grounds crew entrance.
Yeah.
And we're walking over to first base, just because you start at first base. And I start to run, and my dad is behind me, like with me. He's supposed to walk to home to go get me.
Yeah.
And my dad like
did your dad run?
He like looks around and he goes, "I'm gonna run the bases."
Oh, he did.
Yeah. So he took off to second base. It's like this huge guy. There's all these kids that are like 5, 6 years old, 10 years old, right? And then there's my dad who takes off towards second base. And the ushers like halfway through like had to stop him. They're like, sir, kids only. And I got to home plate, and he was at home plate, and he met me there, and he goes, and he was like all sad. He's like, dang, I really want to run those bases.
He only hit a double that day.
He didn't even make it a second.
Well, the best part too is, I've been on the field to coordinate kids run the bases as like a staff member, and I know how big of a circus that it can be. Oh, but that's funny you say that. With the Orioles where I'm at now, we do seniors stroll the bases on like every Tuesday game, so we actually give them the chance right there. And it takes, I'll admit, it actually takes a really long time to get them through because they usually just walk the bases. But when you see this, and you see sometimes that there are parents that are more excited than their kids to be on the field like this.
Yeah.
But that's a wholesome moment too, because it's like, what are they going to do? They're just going to respectfully tell him to go back to his seat probably. Like, I mean, it's an innocent thing. They're not going to show him up in front of his kids. But, I mean, that's so pure, too. Because, like, you've been sitting there, you've been scoring the game, like, you're so into it. And then all of a sudden you step on the field and you're like, this is sacred ground. Like, this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then he's just like, it is sacred. I'm going to take advantage right now.
He was so sad that he couldn't run the bases. I still talk to him, and he's still like so mad didn't get around the bases that day.
Dude, the fact that he was comfortable even attempting to is the coolest. I shouldn't say it's cool because my employer might not support me encouraging people to do that, but that's awesome. Like, that's such a genuine moment, man. Oh my goodness. Good times. We need more people like that in the world, honestly. I almost wish that if anybody has a story on that, those are the best stories to share. Oh, goodness, man. There you go. We got crazy fans out there, man. I'm not accusing your dad of being a crazy fan. I was just saying that collective just kind of wrapped the bow on everything that we've been talking about.
We were both crazy fans, and that's what makes, in my mind, that's what makes baseball. So without the fans, you don't have the game. Like,
that's a good point. That's a very good point.
Without the fans and without them, doing the crazy stuff that they do, or without them showing up and not paying attention and paying the money to be there, like that, it takes all kinds, and that's what it takes to make the game of baseball. You have to have the fans. The fans are why Shohei Ohtani's get $700 million. Without the fans, he wouldn't be getting that,
Yeah, and that's what makes it special. I mean, I think about like the moments that I remember the most in the game. The things that, I mean, when I look back on my career, not that I want to relive the glory days too much here, but like the things that I remember the most are the games where I threw extremely well. Like, I mean, I can count them on probably one hand of the games that I'm like, I was on. I remember those. But other than that, the things that I remember the most are like the interactions. I mean, typically it's with teammates or with coaches or with your family, those types of things. But I can think of so many instances to where the memorable moments on my career, I honestly think that I remember more the wholesome fan interactions than I do the actual playing interactions. And that's what keeps you going, too. Like, if you're in the middle of the weight room, and this is especially in the off season, something that I think is brutal is you don't have those moments. Like, you're showing up in January and you're lifting weights and you're getting your throwing together, and you may not see a fan again until spring training. And in the minor leagues, you might not even see one through then, other than just a couple people walking past the backfield. But that's cool. And I mean, I think that this serves as a good reminder. I know we closed our episode yesterday talking about this, of just persevere through the winter. And visualize to yourself what it's like when people are actually going to give you the stage of where you have been. And I think that's a big reason that I wanted to talk about that today, is because I wanted to encourage people to recognize that through these winter months, you might be stuck in a snowstorm, like Evan, you've mentioned, and you're going to be stuck in a snowstorm here soon. When you realize that those instances, of course, you start seeing these things are a lot more prevalent, and it's taking you maybe away from the game just because that you're not used to seeing a field at this point. I think that the cool way to really recognize this is giving fans the due that they deserve and recognizing how special it truly is when you get the platform. So, I think that would be awesome just to have people watch long toss. Evan, you got a good nugget for us right here.
Before we go to break, just let me say, Al Newman said it best. It matters to somebody.
There you go. I think about that almost every day. It matters to somebody. That's a gem. I think about when you're in the middle of a long bus ride, or especially pertaining right now, to see the universal capability of that quote, it's absolutely unbelievable. That's a good point. You're at the end of your workout, you're absolutely dead in the middle of January. You just say it matters to somebody. Because you're going to put a smile on somebody's face if you stay the course, man. That's beautiful right there. Well done. We're going to go to break. That's how we get it done. Episode 11 of the Night Pitch. We'll be right back.
But now that I'm here, it's just
we got the bomb on, baby.
Welcome back, my friends. Returning for the second half of episode 11. Evan and I have talked at length about by the way, did you time up that sip? Are you trying to be cool right after the break by just taking a sip out of the mug all sly? Is that what that was?
No, I was thirsty.
Oh, all right. We just counted down to start the episode, to start the second half, and you just instantly went to the mug. I mean, I understand making it in for you, double-handing the mug now.
I know I had an opportunity to get a drink. So
Good grief.
Tell them what we're talking about
let's
today.
do the damn thing. Let's do the damn thing. We want to talk about the good support staff that exists in a tremendous baseball operation. So for those of you familiar with the ballpark experience, you of course have all of the dugout personnel. You've got the players in uniform, you've got the manager, you got the coaches, you got the bullpen set up as well. You have the grounds crew that's taking care of all the field. You've got the clubhouse managers, also known as the clubbies, that are taking care of the uniforms, the laundry, cleaning the spikes, the snacks in the locker room. That's a big deal. You've got the kitchen staff that's taking care of the pregame and the postgame spread. A lot of those guys taking care of concessions for people too. You've got the event staff, ticket takers. You've got parking attendants. You've got ushers in the ballpark. You've got, of course, the game entertainment crew. You've got directors. You've got scoreboard operators, PA announcers, line score operators, DAC stats operators. You've got press box attendants. It's unbelievable to take a look at the different moving parts that go into a comprehensive game day atmosphere. And the higher up you get in baseball, the more comprehensive that truly is. So we wanted to talk about the support staff if you are a uniformed personnel, the ones that you're going to run into the most, which is typically the grounds crew and the clubhouse managers. So, Evan, I'll just let you jump into this as the current and active player. What are the characteristics? We'll kind of do this as a dual type of thing. What are the personalities that are ideal for a great grounds crew worker and a tremendous clubby?
Well, before I answer that, this is also a good topic for you too, because you are part of that personnel in the operating room per se of the game.
Yeah.
So I want to hear your take on some of that
That's also
stuff.
kind of a good point.
Well, but yeah, if you're in the player area, you really only deal with like the grounds crew and the clubbies, and very rarely do you deal with like any of the attendants, like for the fans. But I think a good characteristic is just, it sounds super cliche because it's baseball, but feel. And it's
that's fair.
It's so abstract where like nobody
You get
really,
nothing if you don't have that. Yeah.
nobody really knows what that like exactly means, but that's why it's called feel. Ner. You know, so
I hate when people just brush over that. Like, yeah, he's got good feel. Like, nobody knows what that is. Like, somebody barks out have some feel, and maybe they don't even have feel, barking it at the right time. Like, that's the most. I respect. I understand the validity of what you're saying, but I mean
Yes.
that's a good premise.
But that's-
all right. I mean,
but
we'll allow it.
but that's the nature of feel, is that like nobody really can pin down what it means, but that's how you have feel, is you do the right thing when you can't even pin down really like what you should be doing, right? You just try your best to try to figure it out and do it the right way. Well, like clubbies, I've had a lot of clubbies with a lot of good feel on what's going on, especially the locker room, you know, what the players want to do, what they don't. And a lot of the good clubbies too, they'll run errands for you like during the game. And we're not
That's
talking
true.
like go to the grocery store or like take your car to get oil changed, but like we're talking like, hey, can you go to the gas station and pick up some Red Bulls? Like, we got to go out for the anthem, but the bullpen needs like this kind of energy drink, this kind of one, or whatever. And then they come back because they go during the game. They come back and they bring it to the bullpen.
Yeah.
You know,
It's the most pure. Well, honestly, too, it's amazing because, I mean, for some people that maybe don't know this, maybe somebody that hasn't spent a lot of time in a locker room or a clubhouse, it's very typical for you to tip the clubbies. Like this sometimes you'll walk into a clubhouse and a clubbie may actually have like a QR code for their Venmo. And that's the standard thing. If you send them to go get Red Bulls for you or something like that, you're going to pay them how much it costs for the actual drinks, and you're going to tip them on top of it. They actually, I'm sure there are some that make tremendous money.
Oh yeah,
honestly, especially off tips.
Our system is usually like at the end of a home series, you tip them. Now, if I ask the club to like help me out 6 different times, I'm going to tip them more than if I never even saw him the whole week. But either way, at the end of every home series, you're going to tip him something.
Yeah. Some of the most pure people too, and I mean this applies for grounds crew workers too. I won't leave them out of there, but I can think of some of the more memorable ones. I've spent plenty of time working in the Arizona Fall League, and for those that don't know, I mean, it's exactly how it sounds. Fall League, October and November is when these games are, and it's at the end of the professional season. So not many leagues go into November. This is like the only kind of affiliate league that's sanctioned through MLB anyways. So I think about, the players are coming here. Maybe they've already played 150 plus games and they're jumping into another, almost a 30 game schedule or something like that. And to see the degree of expertise that these clubhouse managers have of recognizing how long the season has already been and recognizing what they can do to make it so much easier for people. Like, I still remember the names of me working primarily as like a communications staff member for that league. I would walk every time I went to Scottsdale Stadium for the first league that I was working, the first year. I would go to the clubhouse. I would go say hi to Scott and Arturo, which was the fact that there's no reason for me to even know their names, but they were just so pure and so genuine. They'd be taking batting practice, or the team would be hitting, and they'd be standing in the dugout. I'd go over and I'd talk to them. Some of the nicest human beings, I say this without hesitation, some of the nicest humans that I have ever met have been clubhouse managers, and that includes, I do want to name drop somebody if they're watching, a man by the name of Chad Chiffin. Everybody calls him Chiff. He is a clubhouse guy with the Diamondbacks, and he also does plenty with the Fall League as well. He was actually on the foul line for the World Series this year, and I'm watching, I'm hanging out. All right, they announce, they go through, and they're just saying, all right, here's the sports staff, and then the TV broadcast cuts in when they announce the coaches and the players. Well, all the players are high-fiving the support staff, and I look about 5 people in from the end of the foul line, and Chiff is standing right there. So it's game 1 of the World Series. I'm like, that's my guy. So I took a video of it and I sent him a text. And I said, you're looking pretty sharp right here, man. Literally the 7th inning of the World Series. Chiff texts me back like, thanks, brother. And I'm going, I just got a text from the actual World Series from this guy. Like, it was so pure. And I mean, I know I'm saying it kind of like, I mean, I selfishly was like really fired up going, this is the coolest thing ever. But I mean, I think of those opportunities of such a pure interaction of, you might not necessarily see something like that in the corporate world. And I can attest to this, that if I'm trying to find somebody that can put a smile on my face right away, there's a good chance that I'm probably going to go right up to the clubby. And I believe that they are the most equipped to take care of a lot of people. And it shows. I mean, there's a reason they're in the position that they're in.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, there's some really, really good clubbies. There's also some clubbies that are brand new, and they don't understand that if you do the extra stuff, you're gonna make a lot more money. And it's crazy because you'll have, like, especially in the minor leagues, you'll have major league guys come down and do rehab assignments, right? So we had this one year, we had a larger time, longer career big leaguer come down and do a rehab assignment. And our clubby was...
Oh, those are the tips right there.
Our clubby was young, like really young. And one of our players told our clubby, like, hey, like, take care of this guy really well while he's here. Because when he leaves, you're going to get, like, a good tip. You're going to get...
Good feel by that player, by the way. Yeah, that's a good comment. That's a player that knows what he's doing.
Because he was really young and really shy, and he didn't really talk to anybody a lot. And a lot of our guys are like, dude, you're missing out here. Like, you're missing out on some relationships.
He's starstruck by a big leaguer.
But he's young because he's young, so he's shy. And that makes sense because they're shy. But, yeah, that was those when big leaguers come down to do rehab assignments in the minor leagues. A lot of times this post-game spread is very different.
Yeah, they'll hook it up, typically, yeah.
Usually they hook it up, and then the clubby, if you're a clubby out there listening, take care of anybody who has a rehab assignment. I'm telling you, because it's going to be helpful to your summer that you spend as a club.
Like, I can't even imagine. I mean, the game-changing moments that can exist for somebody's financial future. Of like, could you imagine you just come home and you're just hanging out with your girl and you're like, yeah, it's just so-and-so is here. Well, how'd it go? And you just pull out like a stack of cash out of your pocket.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, I guess it went pretty well. There you go.
My Venmo transaction got flagged on his tip. That's how it went.
It's such a pure moment. I mean, it's fun too because I mean, you recognize how genuine it is on so many levels, and this is when it kind of came real to me. Is like when I was working outside of actual playing. Like I wasn't getting anything from clubbies, but the ones that I met were still like just as pure. Like you wouldn't have thought they were doing it for the money at all, which was one of the coolest things. I can remember another time. I think I was at like Salt River Fields or something, if I'm not mistaken, and another fall league situation. I walked into a clubhouse because I was looking for a player for like an interview and just trying to let them know that somebody wanted to talk to them. And the club is just, I'm not really supposed, I mean, I'm not authorized. I mean, I'm authorized to be there, but it's kind of like, what are you doing in the middle of the game in the territory? And I was kind of timid going, I don't want anybody to think I'm stepping on their toes. And he's just like, what's up, man? And he's just cleaning a pair of spikes or something. And I'm just like so taken back of he knew that I was in such a neutral, like kind of defensive territory of I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers. I'm just trying to ask an innocent question. Oh yeah, he's back over there. Yeah, you want me to go get him for you? Like as he's brushing the cleats, well, hey, he wants to see you. This player comes walking out. What's up, man? So like he literally broke the ice for all of these different interactions. I wish I knew this particular guy's name. I feel bad that I don't know his name, but I know that those are good ones that could really turn a day around. And I know that, you know, grounds crews for the most part, I think that some of the more pure moments, especially because, you know, if you're a player, maybe the gates to the ballpark aren't open yet, but the grounds crew's taking care of the field almost around the clock.
Yeah.
Can you think of like wholesome interactions of a grounds crew member that you've really had?
Oh yeah. The guy in Everett, he's been doing it for a while. And like a lot of times if it's rains all of a sudden during BP, or like I want to get off the mound like during BP, like before the game, like I'll just stay and help him fix it because I'm like, this is extra
that's
like
cool.
This is extra work that he doesn't need to do, so I'll just stay and like help him fix it. But I seriously think that in the minor leagues we should be tipping the grounds crew members just like we're tipping the clubbies.
That's a good point.
Because they do a lot of work. But before we get into the grounds crew stuff, I wanted to say something too about the clubbies. There's this funny story about how you were talking about how he broke the ice between you and another player.
Yeah.
Well, there's one guy who would always come into our locker room like unannounced in the minor league, and like he was not really supposed to be in there. He just kind of came in there and like would start talking, and we had like, this was in an area that wasn't it was, I guess it wasn't super, it was, there's a lot of homeless people in this area, and they would wander in the locker room a lot.
Oh sure, yeah.
So
you never know what you're gonna get all of a sudden.
Yeah, so our clubby also played security guard in our locker room for like most of the season. Like he would stand and watch the game from like the entry door because he could see it, and he would just like make sure that nobody came in and out of the locker room.
Word gets out that he's got the best snacks in town, and all of a sudden he's got to protect them.
Yeah, now he's a security guard too.
But no, grounds
crew guys, they do a great job. Seriously.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's fun, especially like when you get into the thick of the summer. And I mean, I can attest too I can remember when I was playing just like high school ball. Sometimes I knew I was going to have a good day based on just how good the mound was. Like, I mean, there's some facilities that at the amateur level, maybe you're not going to get a good mound. I mean, that's just the way it is. I remember people would complain about pitching on turf mounds. And when I was in high school, I was thrilled that it was a turf mound because I knew there wasn't going to be any holes. Like, I'd rather pitch on turf than find out that I got to pitch out of the Grand Canyon or something like that.
As long as you can wear cleats.
So that's a good point. Yeah, we can get into that. When you find out that you're clipping a metal spike on your I know that there's been, I mean, that's interesting, especially too if you tipped a grounds crew there's a good chance bullpen mounds are going to get taken care of very well too.
Yeah.
Which that's a different. I mean, those are typically. I mean, those are ones that are going to be historically overlooked as well. So I know that it's an interesting mix because you do never really know what you're going to get. But I think that it applies across the board. And I guess I'll kind of expand on this because you mentioned, myself working in more of like the operations side of event management or game presentation. I think of the different atmospheres that are created, like within live entertainment. And I know the different facilities that I have encountered of how much the atmosphere can change just based on two people in the building, and that's the PA announcer and the music operator. Like, if those two people do a great job, like I would argue outside of the actual on-field personnel, the two most important, well, I probably have to say like a paramedic person. I mean, for liability
well,
purposes,
you don't always need the
there.
paramedic every game, hopefully.
Well, no, I've been conditioned to just all right, safety aside, I mean, assuming that safety is satisfied,
Correct.
I would say the two most important positions in the field from a game presentation standpoint are the PA announcer and the music operator. And I know there's a dude, I don't want to turn this into just name dropping all my friends, but a dear friend of mine, he's the PA announcer at Salt River Fields, which is the spring facility for the Rockies and the Diamondbacks. His name is Patrick Legreed. And to my knowledge, for a lot of games, I don't know if he does this so much for spring training, but when I've been there for college tournaments or fall league games, he does the music and the PA announcing, and he does a tremendous job. I mean, he's got a voice first and foremost, but when you see how much that can contribute to the atmosphere, and I know it's a little bit more exposed at lower levels of games. You can be let's say you're in a college summer league, or if you're in like a college spring division or something like that, whatever your conference is, when there's one team that does a really good job and there's another team in the same conference that doesn't do a really good job, like when it gets clearly exposed, if you try to figure out why is everybody so energized to play at this stadium and not this other one, like more often than not, I really do believe it's based on what those two people in the control room take care of.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I want to ask you, too, who is, in your mind, what are the most important roles for ballpark operations that involve fans? Like ushers or like food and drink people or ticketers?
This is really interesting too, because I think the progression through the ballpark I've heard this from some guy that he works in fan services with the Diamondbacks, of what is the moment for a fan, of like everybody has a moment where they know that they've arrived. And I cannot speak highly enough on what I believe some of the most important people are. And it's the parking staff and the ticket takers. Because, I mean, there's people that maybe they had a rough day. Maybe they're just struggling. Maybe they're really fired up, whatever it is. But that first interaction of you're paying for parking and somebody's just smiling saying, "Welcome to the ballpark. How are we feeling? We're having a great time here." As opposed to if you just get like some underpaid fast food worker equivalent, just like scanning it to, all right, park over here. Like, that's such a pivotal moment at the ballpark. And I think about if you invest in something just to get people really motivated. I mean, I get really like charged up about this because I recognize the power of this. Of it might not sound like the most coveted job, positioning cars, but you have such a huge opportunity to put smiles on people's faces. And the cool part is they're naturally excited to be at the park. Like, that's something that I stand
It's your customer's
firm on.
first impression.
Yes.
Right?
So that's a huge one. I mean, that's why I kind of bring that up. That's a very good point, making reference to, this is the turning point. Like, this is going to shape the day. This is the first moment. And I think about, like, this is not really baseball related, but like if you're going to, let's say, like a doctor appointment, or you have a meeting with somebody that you've never been to their office before and you don't really know where to go. Like, if you're walking around an unfamiliar place with like weird turns and you're trying to fire, like if you're pulling up to somebody's house and all you have is an address and you don't know how to get there, just realizing the vulnerability that exists there of not really knowing where you are. So I'll use this as an example. Me living in Florida right now, I drove to Miami. And I went to Marlins Park for a game. I'm sorry, Lone Depot Park. They got an actual sponsored name now. But I remember I wanted to drive through Little Havana, which is where the ballpark is. I wanted to take the long way through there to observe this, to check everything out. And I'm pulling up to the ballpark, and I'm looking around, and I am so unfamiliar on how it goes. Well, I pulled into their parking garage because I'm just like, all right, let's just do this. And I had to scan a QR code to park. So I don't want to sound like I'm bad mouthing the Marlins, but my first 5 or 10 minutes at Marlins Park was spent on a smartphone trying to pay for parking based on a QR code, which I thought, how cool would it have been if there was a guy at that window, he's shaking my hand saying, how are you? Are you here to watch a ball game? We're having a blast. But instead it was me just typing this in, panicked, because the last thing I want to find out is realizing I couldn't drive the 3 hours home at the end of the day. So, I mean, I put that aside, not a big deal. I walk into the gates. Their staff actually was very accommodating, and they did do a very good job. So I don't want to make it sound like that's a bad thing. But I also think about how pivotal that one interaction is. And then I will say the ushers too. Everybody plays a role. The ticket takers in a similar capacity of that ingress, that first pivotal moment. But the other side of it is how efficient can you clear out the stadium? And this is more of a stadium operation design. But are you stuck in traffic? What's the transit like as you're leaving? But the optimal flow of, and this is maybe like a police force type of thing of keeping people safe and keeping people knowing how to move. That's huge too, because what do you get to? What's the last taste in your mouth of as you're leaving the park? Because you might get kind of frustrated sitting behind the wheel, finding out you're stuck. But I mean, at that point, your opinion's already been formed. But no, I'm a big proponent for it. How enthusiastic are people coming into the ballpark? And I'm a little biased towards that with predispositions, but that's always something that I feel pretty charged up about.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes on logistically with all that stuff. But I think you're right. Like the first impression for a customer, right? Could you imagine if a club put so much into the first time you
it'd be awesome.
Set foot in the park? Because that's really the only time that you ever need to interact with a lot of the ballpark staff, like your ushers,
that's also
the
true.
Ticketers and the parking people. Because after that, once you get to your seat, the guys who gosh, I'm trying to think of a specific name. Colby here, dude walks down the.
Oh, the vendors.
The vendors, but not the vendors in the shop, but the vendors that carry the stuff.
Yeah,
they're always pretty cheery, right? Because they have to yell it out.
Yeah, well, they're trying to get money too. Yeah,
right. They're trying to get tips and all that. But if you could focus on those 4 things, and those people being customer service oriented, then that would right
juicy,
there
honestly
make the experience of the ballpark so much better. And you know what?
Yeah,
that's why I like Chick-fil-A.
I see what you did there. There you go. That's actually kind of true in that context. I'll give you that one. I can think of, I remember, and this is something that, I mean, in my current position, I don't want to talk too much on what I do for a living here because, I mean, I want to make it about our viewers. But I mean, my title with the Orioles right now is manager of event operations, and I oversee over 100 game day personnel. I'm not saying that to sound arrogant. It's just, when you develop this understanding of these are all of the people that go into it. I think of how cool it is to just see smiles on people's faces. And then that's what keeps me coming back to work, is because I recognize that at one point I was that person walking into a big league ballpark for the first time. And I don't remember much about the fan interactions when I first stepped foot in a big league stadium. I remembered it was August 2001. The Rockies played the Pirates in Denver. And I remember being so enamored by the city blocks. I was kind of startled because this was the first real time that I remember walking through a city. I was 5 or 6 years old was all. And I remember kind of being taken back. It was sensory overload. And I don't remember. I remember walking through the old turnstiles. My dad, my brother, and I scanned our tickets. We walked through, and I just think about how pivotal of a moment that is. If there's a family right now that's probably walking through a stadium gate this year in a similar capacity to what I was, and if you're the ticket taker that sees that family that's wide-eyed and they're checking out going, this is absolutely incredible, you could hook somebody on the game of baseball. Literally, that could cause a lifetime of just love for the game. And I think that's what gets me fired up to do what I do. And I think about, yes, a lot of the glory goes to the players, and rightfully so, because that's where the magic happens. But, that's cool. And it's fun to see, it's almost like your best clubby would make an exceptional ticket taker. Like, I wish that we could just take those personas and put it across the board.
You're right. Yeah, absolutely.
It's fun, man.
It's almost like you can just set the tone for being there right away.
Yeah,
your enthusiasm,
like
if you can match theirs when they come to the ballpark for the people who are really, really enjoy the game, then that's going to make a big, big difference. But like your role,
it's cool.
Dealing with the PA too and the music as well. That's a whole nother type of experience to kind of manicure and deal with. I want to know. I want to know. Do you have any influence on the music that's played at the ballpark?
You know, this is actually kind of a cool thing. I remember this was for an Orioles spring training game last year. There's a performing arts hall in Sarasota that the Four Tops are like a 1960s, 1970s vocal quartet. They've won Grammys. Like they're legit. Like if you watch the movie Superbad, they have like all the funk and R&B songs from the 70s. There's a song by the Four Tops in the movie Superbad, and that was how I knew who they were. But anyways, they were playing a show here, and to promote their show, they came and sang the national anthem, all four of them. And so I remember I told our control room operators, and this was the scoreboard crew, and I actually went up to our music guy, and I said, "You're going to see four dudes walk out looking like they've won a Grammy. And I'll lead them on the field." But I told them, I want you, as soon as their foot touches the infield dirt or the warning track, as we're queuing them up for the anthem. We got them to the field about 15 minutes before so they could see the field, they could have a good time, we could get them into position. I told our music operator, I said, as soon as you see them get to field level, I want you to start playing their songs. And I said, these are the 3 songs. You don't need to play them all in order, but pick at least 2 of them and play them when they're on the field.
Right.
To see these guys, like, they're like, yeah, this is what we do. And then they're like on the field, it's pretty cool. And they heard their song and they were like all perked up, going, this is the coolest thing ever. So like, they're like, did you tell them this? I'm like, they knew what they were doing. This is cool. But I mean, that was a gratifying thing for me. So, I mean, I know that like my duties right now, I write the PA script for spring training, and it sounds a little bit more sophisticated than it is. I mean, it's a lot of plug and play. It's kind of the same every game, but there's minor tweaks and minor differences. And I like to kind of spice it up for season ticket holders of, you know, let's give them a little bit of variation of it's not going to be the same read. It keeps them on their toes. It keeps things fresh. So I think the best ones and the ones that are the most equipped are realizing that you're okay to be human, to read kind of the atmosphere of the game. Like, I absolutely love the sound effect side of baseball. Especially at the minor league level, you tend to get like this. We got a night pitch video, actually, for those of you that want to check out the YouTube page. We have the greatest strikeout sound effects ever, and it's set up like a March Madness bracket of 32 sound effects for a strikeout. But I think of those, and I think about the creativity that goes into it and the awareness of knowing how to follow the game. So, like, the best PA announcers that I've encountered are the ones that they know how to follow the schedule to a T. Like, I'll give them a whole breakdown of minute by minute. This is exactly what we're going to read in this order. This is how it's going to go. The game timestamps, and it flows. And, I mean, the ones that are really professional, they know how to make it work. They know the diction that you're supposed to follow along with. And like when you realize the direction that goes into this, I think the biggest challenges are realizing that there's a distance between where they are at like press level and there's like an on-field director. Like typically I'll have like a headset and I'm communicating back and forth to them. Mm-hmm. But the amount of moving parts that go into it when you realize that you have to tell the announcer, all right, we're ready to go. Like you confirm with them 10 seconds before saying we're still going as scheduled. And there have been times, I mean, not to kind of insert this, but we had the governor of Maryland throw out a first pitch, and he was talking to the owner of the Orioles. Like he's on the grass, like just hanging out, and like minute by minute, I know that we need to have him go out here. Like we're on a strict schedule right here, and I think the game was televised too, so I had to make sure the game started at this exact time. So I had to cut off a conversation with the owner of the Orioles and the governor of Maryland, saying, "Hey, you're on in 10 seconds," and like the owner of the Orioles kind of backed off, and I was like, "Oh, my bad, dude." So I was
sorry.
like, well, no, I'm actually doing my job. I guess it's fine. But So there's a video that the Orioles put on their Instagram page of this, and I'm kind of like smiling, trying to encourage, like, yeah, here we go, all right. And like I got him into position right on, and then they're showing him waving to the crowd, walking out, and I'm in the background just like with this half nervous smile on my face. I'm like, all right, please walk out to the mound here. He did a good job. He was a good dude. It worked and it was cohesive. But I mean, you mentioned, just kind of get back what you asked, of to see the flow of this and the coordination of, theoretically it's not a difficult thing, but then you put 10 to 15 people involved to where, I mean, you got a scoreboard person, the music person, the PA announcer, you got the statistician, you've got the on-field director, you've got the anthem singer, you've got the first pitch thrower. Like, there's 8, first of all. So you got to coordinate all 8 of those into something that runs smooth. So, I mean, you can always, I feel bad too, because the first pitch of the game, I can always take like a deep exhale. And I'm like, all right, well, we got it done.
Yeah, it's going.
I think I'm one of the few positions in the baseball world that I actually can let my guard down as soon as the first pitch is thrown. And it's the most backwards thing. But no, it's good times, man. I want to ask you about, I mean, we opened the episode talking about like the funny fans, or like the devoted fans that you've seen. From game presentation, where you've been, this can be home ballparks, this could be road, wherever you are. As far as like the actual package of announcing and music and cohesiveness, are there any venues that really stand out to you that were really cool?
Oh my gosh!
I guess a lot of them are at the level you are, though.
Of any that I've played in, or anywhere.
Let's go anywhere.
Okay, anywhere that I've been to. I want to say opening day in St. Louis.
Yeah, that's a different animal. That's a good point.
Because they're very baseball there, and I imagine whoever had your job in St. Louis at that point in time was up to their ears in stuff that needed to happen.
In coordination, it's just a mess. Oh, that would be so much fun.
All their retired numbers come out in cars, and then there's a salute to Anheuser-Busch where they bring out the Clydesdales and they play the
Clydesdales,
song.
that's right.
Yep, and it's a whole thing because that city is
so cool.
So into that team, and opening day is like a big deal for them. And we got to go to one, and I can only imagine the amount of logistics that went into that. But for me, I always liked the affiliates and the minor league affiliates that did a really good job, just kind of like having their PA and their music be more engaged in the game.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know, like sometimes there's random music playing that's not really like involved with the scenario, and a lot of teams have, and I feel like I'm forgetting a team because I've been to the point before where like I've been at these affiliates where they're playing walk-up songs for the opposing team that has something to do with either their name or the way they looked or whatever, and it's like that the whole game.
That's a whole. We could make a whole episode on those.
Yeah, but I always liked when the PA and the music people were the PA and the music were involved in the game, and I feel like one that maybe sticks out is Vancouver, the Vancouver Canadians.
Yeah, I've heard that there's some engagement up there. Yeah.
Well, and also it could be the ballpark too, because the way that their grandstand is set up is there's no like outlet. It's concrete, and then there's a metal roof, and it's really big. It's a big minor league stadium, and there's a beer garden down both sides of the line all the way to the foul pole.
Oh, that's the best. That's awesome.
And there's a lot of people that go to these games. Like Vancouver is always full, and I always thought that was a cool environment because you had a lot of people at a minor league game. They did the music and the PA according to what was happening in the game, and everybody was into it. I thought that place was, but I feel like I'm forgetting one, but maybe I'll remember it in a later episode. We'll see.
Yeah, there's some fun. I mean, it's funny when you're able to kind of compare them too, and when you go back to a ballpark for multiple times, and like that's funny. You always knew that you arrived when it was business as usual, and you knew that this was the way that it was at that park. Like, I mean, it starts to be, yes, ballparks are identifiable for their physical features and the architectural design. But when I grew up in Colorado, when I go back to Colorado, and it's funny now seeing things the way that I see them based on, like, we got one of the night pitch videos that we have, then one of the extended cuts on pregame presentation and on how different teams will incorporate different orders. I won't bore people with those details. Just click out, go watch it, and then click right back into this episode where you are right now. But I know, I mean, it felt like you were at home when you recognize, I mean, as you mentioned, like when you would go to opening day in St. Louis and you see that type of rhythm, that's a huge deal and that's a cool atmosphere. But it's fun to keep it together, man. Like, I mean, that's part of what makes this game so much fun, and that's why we enjoy it. And again, these are the wintertime discussions that we need because we keep it rolling, we have a good time, and we make it work right there. So good times right there. And to all the people up in Vancouver, keep doing your thing. I need to get up there. That sounds like a blast. And in Everett. I mean, I saw you in Everett too, and that was a good atmosphere. So you guys got it covered.
Everett's pretty cool field too.
There we go, man. Evan, my friend, we're going to cap this thing off. You got anything for us to close it out?
I don't think so, but you know what? Between everybody you work with and everybody that's at the game and every little kid that came to keep the scorebook, even if you don't want to play that day and you've been playing for 100 games in a row, I'm 9 years old and I'm there with the scorebook and I'm ready to watch you. One day a year.
It matters to somebody, man. There you go. You know, I'll add in here, especially if you're walking into the ballpark with a group of people. I mean, hopefully the ticket takers and the parking people are going to be good stewards of the game and they're going to put a smile on your face. But take it upon yourself as a fan, too. If you're at a ballpark, if you got the opportunity to put a smile on the face of those around you as you're walking in, that could absolutely change somebody's life. That's why I do what we do. That's why Evan trains, and that's why he keeps playing hard. And that's why we make these episodes, is because we want to virtually put a smile on all of your guys' face and continue to lead the game in the best way that we possibly can. And that's why we're going back-to-back episodes on back-to-back days to get our 2024 sets rolling. So there we have it, man. This has been episode 11 of The Night Pitch. We are so happy that you have joined us. We're so happy that you're following along. Check us out on the social channels. Check out all the cool business that we've got cooking up. We got more guests on the docket. We've got more episodes ready to come your way. And we hope that we can continue to hopefully carry the torch for some people out there, spreading the love for the game, making it all work. Until next time, he's Evan Johnson. I am Justin Wick. This is The Night Pitch.